Slow death is the worst death, isn't it? It takes time to eradicate the existence of the victim and makes him realize how cruel death can be. However, in ancient times, when it was given as a punishment, they liked it to be slow. I know it's brutal as hell, but the society at the time wanted criminals to have the taste of a horrific slow death. Want to know what it was like? Well, let me tell you that history wrote it as the slowest execution ever. And in this video, we'll show you the execution method called Immurement. Its literal translation is to shut up within walls. Usually, the horrible act has involved sealing the poor soul inside of a box resembling a coffin. But it has also occasionally involved sealing them inside of a wall or other building. Without a doubt, the history of immurement is a dark stain on the human race's timeline, with instances of the practice being documented on practically every continent for ages. Immurement is a procedure in which a person is confined to a room with no exits. An immured individual is typically left there until they pass away from malnutrition or dehydration. Asphyxiation may be the cause of death in circumstances where a person is buried alive. This is frequently used as a means of execution, although it is also sometimes used for other reasons, such as ascetic or human sacrifice. Throughout history and many civilizations, there are instances of immurement. In addition, there are several myths concerning those who have been immured. Sometimes, skeletons have been discovered hidden behind walls, which has been taken as proof that this practice was in place. Immurement is most frequently connected to the Vestal Virgins in the setting of ancient Rome. More particularly, this was supposed to be a penalty for individuals who were found guilty of violating their chastity vow. The Roman goddess of the hearth, Vesta, was served by a group of priestesses known as the Vestal Virgins. The maintenance of the eternal fire at the temple of Vesta was one of the most significant responsibilities of these priestesses. The loss of this sacred light was seen as a horrible portent because it symbolized Vesta's defense of the city. The Vestal Virgins were given exceptional privileges because they were in charge of ensuring Rome's well-being. In many ancient societies, there are stories of the aristocracy being interred alongside their slaves or servants as part of the burial process. These people were sacrificed. It is thought so that they would go with their masters into the afterlife. In the Middle Ages, the Roman Catholic Church also imposed similar punishments to nuns or monks who had breached chastity vows or made heretical statements. Unlike the virgin Vestals, these humiliated nuns and monks were to be confined in a tomb to live out a somewhat longer life of total seclusion. The punishment was known as going into peace, and it involved the condemned being isolated from the outside world and receiving only sustenance through a narrow aperture. Several immurement instances were purposefully handled as extremely slow executions. Immurement, however, may also be a brief state that was applied either voluntarily for a predetermined period or as a sort of punishment. To punish offenders, especially those who committed sins of the flesh, the medieval Christian church utilized temporary immigration. Such people spent months or even years being bricked up inside of a small food and waters only quarter or hidden away in monastery depths. Let us show you the story of Elizabeth Bathory, who was sentenced to death through immurement. Bathory was charged with a harrowing list of atrocities against both female servants and young noblewomen who came to her for instruction. After her widowhood in 1604, the majority of the alleged attacks and murders allegedly occurred. The Hungarian government was contacted by a Lutheran clergyman, and an investigation was subsequently launched in 1610. 4 of Elizabeth's housekeepers and close friends were also detained that year on suspicion of being her collaborators. They were prosecuted and convicted. The 4th was given a life sentence, while the other 3 received death sentences. She was imprisoned at her Castle Active home in 1610 after being charged with horrifying serial killings, and she stayed there until her demise. According to reports, Bathory murdered at least 600 people, setting a Guinness World Record for the most murders by a female. She earned the moniker Blood Countess as a result of her deeds, and Bram Stoker's Dracula might have drawn influence from her. Even then, there were questions raised about the trial itself. Many witnesses would assert that they had heard about Bathory's purported actions from others, even though they were unable to provide first-hand accounts of the incident. Many of the mistress's maids eventually confessed to horrifying atrocities, but only after prolonged torture. A public trial and execution were ruled to be too scandalous due to her significant social rank. Therefore, she was instead placed under house imprisonment. She lived out the remainder of her days at the castle at Seat and passed away peacefully on August 21st, 1614, at the age of 54. But what do you think? Is anything crueler than a slow death? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And for more gruesome and exciting content, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon ASAP. We'll catch up with you in the next one. Until then, peace.